You're listening to the Court of Public Opinion. Let's just start with the hearing. Former Director James Comey, who served from September 4, 2013 to May 9, 2017. It's really hard to start this off like this because I'm without a whole lot of information and just doing more homework. But this case and cases that were not addressed during the time of his position as director of the FBI might explain why some of these cases are now finally getting heard. This report is from ArizonaCentral.com, and they have now, I believe they have Horatio in custody, and this is the mugshot of Lacio Osorio, who was arrested of the night regarding the shooting of Agent Brian Terry. Now, without going into too many details right now, if you don't know about the story about gun walking and the confiscation of guns that occurred even now, and of course the violence on the border would explain why this case is, I believe it's going to get heard. And then of course the shooting in Fort Hood, November 5th, 2009, the mass shooting that occurred on the Army base in Fort Hood, Texas. It might also explain why some of these other cases didn't get heard. And of course, in memory of the soldiers that were lost in Extortion 17. So I don't really want to tackle all this at one time like I already did. I want to do my best. I think most people who've been following news and politics and things like that over the course of 10 years, it's hard to go backward unless we maybe look forward. And of course the hearing, but the case involving the former FBI Director James Comey might explain why a lot of these cases never even got heard yet. We at least done correctly. So let's start there. In the Senate hearings, former Director FBI James Comey, and of course these are images that I found on the internet. The line of questioning that occurred during the course of this hearing, there was a couple things that I really wanted to point out. Forgive me, there's a lot of information that I probably won't be able to touch on. I'll just be able to touch on a couple points here. The document was leaked to who? And that was, the answer was a friend of former Director James Comey, professor. I have to get the name actually. That explains the leak issue. And then what I heard on Michael Savage's radio show today, which provoked me to even do the Court of Public Opinion today, is that not only just draining the swamp, but it might explain why a lot of the cases never even got heard. That often, I know I've heard this, that we've been waiting to see a lot of things go to court that never gone to court, or even, I would be concerned how much we don't know, more or less. And I think the reason I'm making this point to this is that it starts not just with former FBI Director James Comey, but we're asking some serious questions. What happened here? Because for a long time, for at least for over almost a year, we heard that the hack was regarding Russia and leaks, and then the name Reality Winner comes up. Like, that is almost like, I mean, that has to be a joke. Somebody tell me that this is not some kind of joke, because that's what it sounds to me. I mean, I guess we're the joke's on us, I guess. I don't know. I mean, whatever. Not quite sure. But, and the reason I pointed this out is because I'm not going to get into all the minutiae. I'd have to do a little bit more homework. I admit that. I really haven't, I'm really not sure why we even had a second hearing. I mean, but at least clarified that the narrative regarding Russia had nothing to do with hacking into the election. And that's a big one to try to wrap your head around. It's going to take us the weekend to sort this one out. That's why I didn't want to tackle it, okay? I don't have enough information here to really go further than that, but what it does say to me is that the reason why we didn't get the right kind of investigation regarding Brian Terry and other soldiers, like when we think in the case of Fort Hood, Texas, I mean, I have to tell you, we have never, at least not in my lifetime, I never heard of a Border Patrol agent being murdered where there isn't a proper investigation. The families weren't properly recognized to Fort Hood, Texas. Like the idea that there was a shooting on a base, that was outrageous. And what made, it goes a lot further when we think of Extortion 17 and the other cases involving U.S. Navy SEALs. We haven't even touched the surface. So I would be prepared because this is emotional. These are very, very tough topics to all try to put in one post here. But why I'm preparing this is because I need to understand where and what direction is our House of Representatives and our senators. Are they going to ask these questions? Are they going to find out? Is there not just the independent investigations alone, but what and why were these cases handled the way they were? Well, I mean, looking at some of the other players, Attorney General Eric Holder had a lot to do with why these cases never even got heard, much less the hearing that occurred on Thursday. So there's a lot here, and I think we got to get more familiar with the story regarding Agent Brian Terry, Project Gunrunner, and of course Extortion 17, and of course the shooting in Fort Hood, Texas. These have been on the radar for a long time, because these cases go back almost 10 years, and I believe we're going to see probably. If it's not going to happen at the congressional level, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if also Lavoy Finicum, his case, I wouldn't be surprised if these cases will be heard, whether it be a public tribunal or congressional hearing. I just wanted to state that. I'm not quite sure what else to say. But we are going to, I guess, wait and see what happens. Because I believe the point to why I even wanted to post this topic today, because I really wasn't going to even dive into the Senate hearings regarding former Director FBI James Comey. I haven't even gotten that close to it because I didn't see the point to it. I figured I'd just watch the commentary, but after listening to Michael Savage, this is an incredible story. Because when you think in terms of the period of 2003 to 2017, which is over a 14-year period of time, a lot has happened. I think oftentimes when you hear about what the word they mean drain the swamp, that means drain the swamp means start with why these cases never even got heard, and that might point to why we didn't see Agent Brian Terry's case go to court, at least not that it wasn't investigated, but why didn't it go any further than that? And that was because at the time, depending on how you look at this, but DOJ Eric Holder was the Attorney General, and well, let's just be honest, AG Jeff Sessions in charge, and I think you're going to see a different whole independent investigation. I think it has to be done properly, is what I'm saying. And that would explain Fort Hood, Texas. Extortion 17, the case regarding Lavoy Finicum, and also other hearings that probably I might not have mentioned. But I just wanted to state that because I'm not sure where it starts, but it's got to start somewhere, right? And why not start here? If you have any comments, opinions, and views that could help me better understand where we begin from here, because I think that's what you're going to see. In fact, I know you're going to see that because we're already seeing Brian Terry's case being reopened because of the arrest of Horatio. Something, I'm sorry. I don't have it written down in front of me. The only reason, because I wasn't planning on doing this post, but it's the only reason I would want to start somewhere is we're going to be watching and seeing what's going to happen from here. Thank you for listening to the Court of Public Opinion. Have a great weekend. As for like the state representatives here in my region, what we've done is we've taken hours and I've talked to several different types of people who understand the complicated situation we confront on a regular basis. And one of the things that we're trying to hurdle is how to get law enforcement a system where there's checks in it, like internal flagging. More like if you know that this location has been, I mean, there's obviously something, checks in the system, a database where they rank different types of things, but we're talking even go a step further, but how the women's shelters communicate with police departments on how to train with them or work with them or work with people in the community. Oftentimes what you hear is that the victim usually has to wait to apply for victim's compensation. We're talking a couple weeks into it. This is like kind of bridging that gap until the compensation is made available to the victim. And a lot of times that's going to be at the discretion of certain individuals that are looking at case by case, but those funds would be immediately available to the victim within 24 hours, depending on the type of case. That's why I know they number these cases, each more violent than one, but obviously this is at the discretion of those who work with a victim. Meaning these cases get worse every time. One report after another report after another report. It escalates. So you might have had 3 or 4 different calls, but it's escalating. And the only way to interrupt maybe what possibly could end up in a situation where law enforcement could be shot or killed, or the victim could be killed herself or himself, or children for that matter. The way to do this is to interrupt that, that process. Do we have to wait till the victim gets a PFA, or do you have to wait till the paperwork goes through? In fact, that's probably the problem we're running into is legalism, red tape, paperwork that could actually prevent the death of not only police officers but the victims themselves. That's why we want to address our state representatives about how long do we have to wait till like that phone call, 3, 4 different phone calls from that location, until the police can actually intercede themselves. If the victim can't get to the judge, what if the victim has been assaulted several times by this one person, or maybe this person has had a case history of child abuse, and so it should be up to the police officers at some point to be able to, and what it comes down to is that law enforcement ends up in a situation where they too could be killed. Empowering law enforcement means looking at the internal checks in the system and being able to empower them by them going to like a special person, designated person that would be able to authorize or give them help or assistance, and not wait till that next phone call, because that might be the last. This case is an example of why a lot of times victims don't even report the case. It's a case of retaliation. She was obviously almost murdered. There was a lot of problems with this, so this is just another example why it is to empower law enforcement, get the legal red tape out of the way, and that the victim can be empowered as well. Thank you for listening.